Welcome everyone to today's ground school session. I'm Capt.GhostAviator. Over the last 17 years, I've had the absolute privilege of training pilots all across the globe, and today I'm here to guide you through the absolute intricacies of the DGCA syllabus. This explainer focuses on one of the most literally vital subjects you're ever going to study: aviation physiology and human factors.
Before we dive in, I really need you to internalize this one reality. Discipline in the classroom translates to survival in the cockpit, right? This isn't just about passing a test. It is about understanding the strict, hard limitations of the human machine in a totally unforgiving environment. We're running a zero-skip policy today, so I need your absolute full attention. Let's look at the boards and dive right into the technicalities.
So here's today's flight plan. We're going to cover the atmosphere and ISA, the 5 gas laws, oxygen and Dalton's law, the 4 physiological zones, the brain and nervous system, and finally, wrap it up with the respiratory and circulatory systems.
Okay, Section 1, Atmosphere and ISA Baselines, the operational environment.
The basic concept here is pretty simple, right? The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen, roughly 78%, and oxygen sits right at 21%. Now, importantly, the lowest layer, the troposphere, actually holds about 75% of the entire atmospheric mass. It's where almost all of our weather happens. So how do we apply this? Well, all of our aviation altimetry and performance calculations are strictly based on the International Standard Atmosphere, or the ISA model. And listen up, here's a huge DGCA exam tip for you. The ISA temperature lapse rate is exactly 1.98 degrees Celsius per 1,000 feet. Never, and I mean never, round this up to 2 degrees on your exam paper. The examiners are specifically testing your precision here.
Now, I need you to memorize this exact number. Minus 56.5 degrees Celsius. The core concept is that temperature reduces linearly all the way up to the tropopause at exactly 36,090 feet. And at that exact point, it hits minus 56.5 degrees. So your DGCA tip? Just remember that as you continue to climb up into the lower stratosphere, which we call the isothermal layer, that temperature remains completely constant.
Moving on to Section 2, the 5 gas laws, physics of the body in flight.
The fundamental concept we're dealing with here is how gases behave under changing pressure and temperature. And applying these laws literally dictates our critical standard operating procedures. For instance, Henry's law, which governs gas dissolved in a solution, is exactly why we enforce such strict wait times before flying after scuba diving. We absolutely have to prevent decompression sickness. Then you've got Boyle's law, which explains why trapped gases in your ears, your sinuses, and your GI tract aggressively expand as you climb. It's just physics. Now, for your exam, use this handy mnemonic to remember all 5. Bad hens cluck, geese dance. That gives you Boyle, Henry, Charles, Graham, and Dalton. I want you to burn this mental map right into your memory. Let's just rapidly contrast 2 of these laws. Charles's law relates pressure to temperature at a fixed volume. So this explains that sudden, shocking temperature drop you see during a rapid decompression. Now contrast that with Graham's law, which is all about the diffusion of gases from a high to a low concentration. Your entire respiratory system completely relies on Graham's law for normal alveolar gas exchange, literally moving the oxygen from your lungs right into your blood.
Section 3, Oxygen and Dalton's law, the hypoxia mechanism.
Okay, I need you to listen to me with extreme seriousness right now, because failing to understand this next concept is the primary physiological killer of pilots. We're talking about Dalton's law of partial pressures. You absolutely have to understand this. Oxygen remains 21% of the air by volume, no matter how high up you fly. The proportion is always constant. The application of this, however, can be deadly. See, as you climb, the total barometric pressure drops, and because that total pressure drops, the partial pressure of oxygen drops right along with it. Your body physically needs pressure to force oxygen across the alveolar membrane. So here's your DGCA exam tip. Beware of the trick question that claims the percentage of oxygen decreases with altitude. It absolutely does not. The percentage stays right at 21%. It's the falling partial pressure that causes hypoxia.
To survive the exam, and, well, to survive the sky, you need to apply the halving rule. Half by 18, quarter by 36. Let me break that down. At 18,000 feet, the standard barometric pressure drops so significantly that oxygen availability is effectively halved, sitting at 52%. Pushing up to 36,000 feet, you're at 25%. That is just a quarter of sea level oxygen. Rote memorization of these specific altitudes and percentages is strictly non-negotiable for you.
Section 4, 4 physiological flight zones, altitude protective strategies.
The concept here revolves around the atmosphere's 4 functional divisions. We have the physiological,
physiological deficient, partial space equivalent, and total space equivalent zones. We just remember them as P, PD, PS, and TS. Now, applying these boundaries determines our precise mandatory oxygen regimes. So, in the physiological zone, up to 10,000 feet, you're totally fine to breathe normal air. But look higher. Above 40,000 feet, even 100% oxygen isn't enough anymore. You literally require 100% oxygen under pressure. Here's your DGCA tip. Make sure you note the critical threshold for non-pressurized flight. Without supplemental oxygen, a climbing pilot is going to hit a physiological wall of imminent incapacitation at exactly 22,000 feet.
Let me speak with absolute, undeniable authority on this next figure, 63,000 feet. This brings us to the concept of Armstrong's line, and the application here is just a matter of pure, brutal physics. At this altitude, the ambient barometric pressure is so incredibly low that it actually equals the vapor pressure of your body's fluids. What does that mean? It means without a sealed cabin and a pressure suit, your blood and body fluids will literally begin to boil. I mean, at this altitude, your saliva would boil right off your tongue. Memorize 63,000 feet for your exam.
All right, Section 5, Brain and Nervous System, the Master Controllers. Conceptually speaking, your nervous system is split into distinct divisions. You've got the central nervous system, or CNS, which is basically your headquarters. That's your brain and spinal cord. Then you have the peripheral nervous system, or PNS, which acts as the command relays connecting out to your organs and muscles. For regulatory application, consider this mind-blowing stat. The brain makes up only about 2% of your total body mass, but it greedily consumes roughly 20% of your body's oxygen. It's incredibly demanding. So here's your DGCA tip. Because of this massive oxygen demand, hypoxia will immediately degrade your judgment and decision-making long before you even consciously realize you're in danger.
Now, a totally fascinating and absolutely critical subsystem of the PNS is the autonomic nervous system, or the ANS. Conceptually, the ANS controls your involuntary viscera. We're talking your heart, your breathing, your stomach. So how does this apply in the cockpit? Well, in a sudden emergency, let's say an engine failure, the ANS automatically triggers a fight or flight response. It dumps massive amounts of adrenaline into your system and spikes your heart rate over 160 beats per minute, completely without your permission. And here's the DGCA tip. This right here is exactly why we rigorously drill standard pilot checklists. A trained checklist is what allows your conscious, rational central nervous system to successfully override the panicked, reflexive surge of your autonomic nervous system.
Let's just lock this all in with a quick review table. So, your central nervous system handles both conscious and involuntary processing. The peripheral nervous system, that handles both voluntary and reflex actions. But you've got to remember, the autonomic system is purely involuntary. It operates entirely behind the scenes without you thinking about it at all.
And finally, Section 6, Respiratory and Circulatory Systems, the Oxygen Delivery Network.
I like to call this the master synthesis. The core concept here is that your body's systems never ever operate in isolation. It's like a giant, interconnected puzzle. You have the environment, the pneumatics of your lungs, the hydraulics of your heart and blood, and the avionics of your brain. The application of this is absolutely critical. A failure at any single point in this transport chain, whether that's falling atmospheric pressure, failing lungs, or maybe a weak heart pump, it all ultimately results in hypoxia.
Now, the DGCA examiners absolutely love to test your understanding of respiration definitions, so let me make the difference perfectly clear right now. External respiration happens at the lungs. It's the actual exchange of gas between the air in the alveoli and your blood. Internal respiration, on the other hand, happens deep down within your body. That's the exchange of gas between the blood and your individual tissue cells. Do not mix these two up on test day, okay?
Let's take a look at your biological normal SOPs. Conceptually, your circulatory system takes deoxygenated blood through the veins, sends it over to the lungs, and then pumps that fresh, oxygen-rich blood out through the arteries at high pressure. Applying a healthy baseline here means a normal adult resting pulse is right around 72 beats per minute, paired with a normal breathing rate of 14 to 18 respirations per minute.
But what happens when the mechanics fail? Well, angina is severe chest pain that's caused by a reduced blood flow to the heart muscle. A heart attack, or myocardial infarction, occurs when that blood flow is completely blocked off, which causes actual tissue death. The application for us as pilots? Due to the extreme physiological stress of the aviation environment, these are absolute medical disqualifications for flight if they aren't strictly managed.
Wow, okay, we have covered immense ground today. We've moved from the physics of the highest atmospheric layers all the way down to the tiny mechanics of your own heart. So, I want to leave you with this one question.
As you climb up into that unforgiving sky, are you mastering your physiology or is it mastering you? Knowing these limits, adhering to your standard operating procedures, and truly understanding the science behind them, that is literally the difference between a safe landing and a tragedy. Study these boards, memorize those exact values, and maintain that discipline. I'm Captain Pankaj Papil, wishing you clear skies and a totally successful exam. Dismissed.